Can I retire at 49 with $1.2 million saved for retirement? That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG live stream. And I want to show you why we're looking at this. I am a subscriber to Market Watch, and I recently saw an article that caught my attention, and I thought this would be a great live stream because this is so interactive. I want to go through a detailed retirement plan based off of this Market Watch article. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. I'm 49 years old. I have $1.2 million in retirement savings, and I just lost my job. Can I trust the retirement calculators telling me it's okay to retire? That's what we're going to look at, because many of you might actually be in the same situation. I've actually worked with multiple people over the last few months, and they're asking the same question. Hey, I've been laid off. Hey, I got fired. Hey, whatever. Can I retire? In today's job market, they're saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm burned out. And that's what you're going to see in this article here. So here's what the person wrote. They said, "Dear Market Watch, I have $1.2 million in savings, and I'm almost 49 years old. For the first time ever, I lost my job. I'm searching, but I'm concerned about my prospects and my disability being aggravated even more. I'm also burnt out with my profession." So we've got a couple things going on here. We're 49 years old. We've got $1.2 million in retirement savings. So they're doing a darn good job saving for retirement. They've also lost their job, but here's what I also want you to notice. They're searching, but they're concerned about their prospects, and they have a disability that's being aggravated by whatever. And so something's going on that's causing this person to possibly not go back into their current field. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's a physical disability, maybe they were on their feet. I've worked with a lot of I just did a video yesterday for a client who is a welder. And so he's wanting to retire because he's on his feet all the time, or on his knees. His elbows hurt, his shoulder hurts, his back hurts. And so he's wanting to retire because of the physical constraints of his job. This person might have the same thing. It could be mental or it could be physical. So we've got to look at that and see what's going on here. He says, "I'm also burnt out with my profession." Who knows what that is? But I've been there before. I've been burnt out with my profession sometimes. Listen, this is a tough profession that I'm in. I get burned out telling people the same thing over and over again. And a lot of people, I have a lot of great clients, but I also have people not that are clients, but people that leave YouTube comments and things like that and go like, "You're wrong, you're dumb, you're an idiot." And I'm like, wait a sec. I'm just reporting the facts. All right, let's keep going. "Many retirement calculators report that I am insufficiently prepared to retire now, but, right, get your butt out of the way, but others show it is very doable. My expenses are a little under $5,000 a month, with 20% of that budgeted for travel." So we've got $1,000 budgeted for travel. We've got $4,000 per month in expenses. So we're going to look at that. We're going to break that down here in just a second. I'm going to show you how expenses need to be broken down in your retirement plan. In your comprehensive retirement plan, I'm going to show you how you need to break your expenses down, because what you want to look at is your individualized inflation rate, right? So we don't really have a ton of information on this person, but we know they have $5,000 a month in expenses, of which $1,000 is travel. So we don't know if there's a mortgage. We don't know if there's auto loans or student loans. We don't know if there's any fixed payments. So what we're going to assume in this case is we're going to assume all of his expenses are variable expenses, meaning there's going to be inflation on those expenses. So we're going to look at the average inflation rate of 3.27%. We're going to put that on there. We're going to put that on for travel and for his base expenses, right? Like going to Costco and buying raspberries is more expensive today than it was 3 months ago. Listen, I got 3 kids. Food's expensive. Have you bought diapers lately? Hopefully not, depends. But have you bought baby diapers lately? They're expensive, right? And so it's expensive out there. And so we need to look at that. What's that going to look like today? This guy's 49 years old, right? We're looking at a 49-year-old. So we're talking about maybe 50 years of retirement expenses. So we really need to calculate that in. How do I know to what degree can I trust some of these models generally, and especially with such large variances and outcome potentials? That's the big thing, these large variances and outcomes, because you might do a new retirement, you might be on Fidelity, you might be on Vanguard, you might be on some other calculator, and they're all giving you a different viewpoint. And that's because that's how the calculators are designed. Not necessarily designed to confuse you, but it's how they're designed in the sense of their planning. Maybe it's ease of access. A lot of times these easy calculators don't calculate in all the minor details and minor factors that we need to think about. We're going to go through a comprehensive financial EKG here in a second. We're going to look at everything that you need to be thinking about in your retirement. I call it the 316 principle. We want 3 forms of income, 1 comprehensive plan covering 6 areas of your retirement. That's what goes into a financial EKG. And we're going to look at that here in just a second. So he's single and can only count on myself. Thanks. Anxious, burned out, and uncertain. Anxious, burned out, and uncertain. So let's look at this. This is what I want to do. I want to go through a financial EKG. I've called this Glenn Market. I don't really know his name. He didn't sign it, but we're going to give his name Glenn. We're going to say Market because we got this from Market Watch. So let me show you this. So this is Glenn Market. Now, Glenn we're going to do 2 different assets. We got $1.2 million that he said was saved for retirement. Now, I'm just going to assume that it's a 401k because I really don't know how he would have saved $1.2 million in a non-qualified account without getting his match, without getting everything that he needs from the standpoint of being able to contribute. With a 401k, you can contribute more than in a Roth IRA or an IRA. So we're going to make some assumptions here, and then we're going to look at these assumptions. I'm going to show you the differences a little bit in the assumptions so you can be like, well, Drew, what if all of his money was in like a brokerage account? Well, I'm going to show you that's not going to make that big of a difference, okay? So Glenn's 49. We've got $1.2 million in our 401k, which is now our old 401k because we've been laid off. And I'm just going to assume he's got $50,000 in the bank. I don't know what he's got in the bank because the Market Watch article did not tell us what he has in the bank, but we're just going to assume we've got $50,000 in the bank. Okay. Just an easy assumption. I don't know what his house is. He didn't say anything about having a house. So I can't put a house in there and say, oh, this is what he's got from a house standpoint. So I don't know. We just kind of have to go with what we got. Now, listen, if you got questions, comments, anything you want to say about this, leave that below. We'll answer all questions and comments as we go through this. Tell me where you're watching from, what state you're in. College football starts here soon. NFL starts here in Tampa. We got the Bucs. So if you got a favorite team, leave that in the comments section. Would love to hear. I'm a Kentucky fan. So we play a little college football in Kentucky. We've gotten better over the years, more basketball, and I live in Tampa, so go Bucs. So here we go. We got Glenn's got his 401k. Now, from an expense standpoint, we're going to come back. We're going to go to assets here in just a second. We're going to go back there. But here's where I really want to I want to focus on expenses for a second because I think it's really important that you understand expenses. Dwayne's in Sellersburg, Indiana. Cool. Welcome, Dwayne. Thanks for showing up. So we've got baseline expenses of $4,000. Now, baseline expenses are going to be your expenses like utilities, groceries, gas, maybe your funds in there, maybe, going to Chipotle, seeing the Barbie movie, whatever. That's in your expenses, okay? That's your baseline expenses. There's no fixed expenses in this scenario, right? So the Market Watch article did not tell us exactly what his expenses were. It just said, hey, I've got $5,000 of which I'm budgeting 20% of that for travel. So what we can say is 4,000's baseline and 1,000's going to be for travel. So for the baseline expenses, we're going to put a 3.27% inflation rate on it. And the reason we're going to use 3.27% is because that's the average inflation rate for the last 109 years. Okay, that's why we're going to use 3.27%. Travel, we're going to put inflation on it too, right? Because a plane ticket today is more expensive than it was last year, year before, right? It's expensive. We're also going to put a time frame on this. So we're going to say 2053. That's 30 years from now. So we're going to budget travel for the next 30 years. Now, keep in mind, his travel budget, he did say in the Market Watch article, right? He said that he's budgeted for travel, which, of course, could be saved and not spent. So we're going to look at that. This is money that could be saved and not spent. So how is this going to affect him? Like if we take this out, the question would be this: how serious is this person at retiring at 49 years old, right? Because if we show ourselves running out of money with this scenario, with this budget, if we back off the travel, are you serious about retiring early? Okay, now let's forget about the tax problems we got to talk about with the money being in a 401k. Let's forget about market returns and secrets of return risk and 50 years of inflation and expenses. If you're going to retire early, you've got to ask yourself, how serious am I in doing this? Because I get a lot of comments. People are like, hey, I retired early, buy this JEPI or buy this ETF and it'll pay you 10, 12%. Boom, I'm good. Really? Like, we've really got to be thoughtful about this. We've got to have a plan. That's why we call it a Your Financial EKG. It's a comprehensive financial plan. If you want one, go to the description below. Let's get together. We can talk about your specific retirement situation and how we work. We call it 316 principle, right? We want 3 forms of income: Social Security, guaranteed, and some variable income. Variable income is going to be for that traveling, or you need a new roof, or whatever. We need one comprehensive financial plan, 316, 16, and we need 6. That's 6. We need 6 areas to be covered: income, assets, taxes, savings, and investments. Income, taxes, there's 5 or 6 are in there. So David Richmond coming from Carmel, Indiana. Welcome. Go Hoosiers. I know you, David. Go Hoosiers, right? Till basketball season, then we'll talk about that. Dara's in North Florida. Go Vols. Dara, I don't think we can be friends. That's an ugly shade of orange right there, you know? I'm just playing with you. I'm just playing. Kentucky's beat you the last couple of years, so I'm good with that, right? So here we go. So and here's the thing too. Let's focus on expenses for a second, because I really think this is important for you to understand. Let me just back off and teach a little bit, right? So like, instead of preaching at you, let me teach. Let's just teach a little bit. So when you're thinking about expenses, we've got $4,000 in baseline expenses. We're looking at $1,000 for travel. So we have an average inflation rate of 3.27%. That's the overall inflation rate that we're looking at for Glenn. But what if Glenn had some fixed expenses inside of his retirement plan? What if he had, let's just assume he had like a mortgage. Okay, now you guys know, let's say it's $1,000. You know that a mortgage is normally 9 times out of 10, a mortgage is a fixed expense. So there's not inflation on your mortgage. Like if you're paying $1,000 today, you're going to pay $1,000 for the term of the mortgage, unless you want to put more in, or you're in an ARM loan, which normally people aren't in ARM loans, an adjustable rate mortgage, right? So let's just say that he has a mortgage. That mortgage has a 0% inflation rate, right? It's also going to end at some point. So let's say in the same case, this is going to end in 30 years. I'm just using this as an example because I don't know. But you see how his average inflation rate came down? It came down to 2.73%. It was 3.27. Now it's 2.73. That's why it's so important when you're looking at your expenses to go through your expenses. Like, go through them. We're looking at all these different areas and get what the average inflation rate is for those expenses. The Federal Reserve puts out a good survey every year of the cost of goods and services. And when we're doing an advanced expense plan for someone, we're looking at those average inflation rates, because I want to know, hey, listen, if this is something, for instance, here's a good example. He says that he has a disability. Okay, and my disability being aggravated even more. So if we have a disability, maybe there's some chronic health, like it's a chronic health condition. So maybe there's medication, maybe there's, devices, maybe there's doctor visits. I don't know. But so that would need to be factored into the plan. And again, he's been fired, so we're not even factoring in health insurance yet. That's like a totally another expense. But like medical stuff, it has a 7% inflation rate. It's usually 2 to 3% above the average inflation rate. So if we're looking at 3.27, we're looking at 5, 6, 7 for medical, right? And that's a huge expense for him. And that would need to be factored in. So we can't just say, oh, my baseline expenses are $4,000 if there's other things in there that have higher inflation. Again, we're looking at this just on a base case scenario. Anybody who writes into Market Watch to ask them if they can retire, obviously probably needs to meet with a financial advisor. But I'm trying to break this down for you so you can get a good idea of exactly how your expenses need to be. Okay, so baseline 4,000, travels 1,000. All right. Let's go to taxes. So, I mean, taxes are basically like zero. Oh, I did put him in. What state did I put him in? Nebraska. I put him in Nebraska. I don't have anybody from I don't have any Nebraska clients. I would love to have some Nebraska clients. I've got clients in most states, Alaska, Hawaii. I'm still looking for that. But Nebraska is one of those I don't either. So if you got a good Cornhusker out there, holler at your boy. Let's talk. So, but we're looking at taxes. And again, he doesn't mention his state. So I don't know what state to put him in. That's why I did Nebraska. But for 2024, based on his current expenses, his taxes are going to be very low. So this is not a situation where taxes are going to be an issue. Now, yes, let's keep in mind, his money's in a 401k. So if you're pulling out money from a 401k at 49 years old, there's a 10% penalty unless you do a 72T. And then that's setting up substantially equal periodic payments out of your IRA to allow yourself to get money out of your IRA without paying the 10% penalty. And there's a whole IRS. I think I've got it on here. Let me see if I can pull this up for you real quick without boring you too much. Let's see. Where is Social Security? Yeah, let's not. I don't think I want to get into that. I have a whole PDF on 72Ts. It's something that I don't necessarily like to get into a whole lot. 72Ts, once you set them up, they have to go for 5 years or 59 and a half, whichever's longer. So for Glenn, he's 49. We'd have to do a 72T for 10 years. We'd have to estimate the retirement income that we're going to need with inflation for that 10 years. So this is going to be a tough situation. Again, we're just going off a Market Watch article. I think this is a really tough situation for this guy to retire at 49. But we're going to look through some of these scenarios and try to give him some help so that he can do this. Okay. So let's go back to retirement, because this is where this is where we're looking, right? Well, 49 to 69. So we can get him 20 years. At 49, we're pulling out our money, right? Here's our net monthly expenses. This is baseline and travel. And you can see how it's going up. So you see how each month his expenses are going up. That's because of inflation. And what I love about our software is that we're doing inflation on a monthly basis, right? We're not looking at inflation on an annualized return. We're looking at a monthly basis. And so what that does is that gives us a more accurate picture of how much money we got to pull out of the portfolio. Because a lot of softwares just look at it like annual. Like if you're looking at Excel, maybe you're just putting 3% on an annual basis instead of putting it in monthly. And so what we're trying to do is get a real accurate figure on taxes and inflation, because monthly is going to be different from annual, right? It's not going to be way off, but over 30 or 40 years, that's a big number, right? And so it's kind of like an airplane. I don't fly. I don't pertain to fly. I've ridden on an airplane, but I don't have any expertise in flying. But, I've read where if the nose of the airplane's off by just like a little bit, instead of going to LA, you're going to end up like somewhere else, right? Way off. And so that's the same with our numbers here. If we're just a tad bit off and we've got 30 or 40 years, there's a lot that could be missed later on in life, right? So essentially, we're out of money at 69 years old. And we even have Social Security kicking on here of 2543. What I did for his Social Security was just taking a good estimation based on average earnings of somebody at 49 years old, putting those into Social Security. He's not working. He's going to stop working at 49. So we're not going to have maybe 35 years of credits or of working history. So it's like, what's Social Security actually going to be at that point? I don't know. Is it going to have a reduced benefit after the year 2033? Like, I don't know. And so I'm just trying to give a good calculation. But what I can say is this is not good. This ain't working. So what do we got to do? All right. Well, first of all, let's do this. Let's go back to the Market Watch article. Now, remember what he said. He said 20% of my $5,000 is budgeted for travel, which, of course, could be saved and not spent. So, can we adjust expenses? Can we adjust his travel budget? And first of all, let me adjust this real quick because it's still got his expense. There we go. 5,000. Perfect. Okay. So his travel budget is $1,000. what if we took this down? Well, first of all, let's do two things. There's a couple of things that we can look at. We could say we're doing this for 30 years. What if we travel for 20 years? So 2033 to 2043. So that 49, 59, 69 gets him right on the cusp of 70. What if we do 20 years? How does that work? Still at 69. So we're still out of money at 69. So still not a good situation. So go back to expenses. What if we drop his travel budget to $500 a month with inflation? So that's $6,000 a month or $6,000 a year with inflation. Go to retirement. Now we're pushing back to 73. Okay, we're moving in the right direction. Okay. Here's our rate of return. We need to avoid a shortfall, 7.43%, meaning his assets need to earn about 7.43% in order for him to never run out of money. And we're assuming this is at 100. That's just kind of how the software goes to 100. Obviously, if this went to the mid 90s or early 90s, we'd feel pretty good about it. And we also, again, we don't have a house. I don't know what that is. I've got a really good video on YouTube about a 49-year-old who retired with $2 million. I think it's a little bit over two. And he actually sold his house, put the money in a non-qualified brokerage account, went to an apartment and rented, and he's using that money to live off of. So, and his scenario worked because of that. And it's still working to this day. The interesting part is he met a girl and they got married. So his scenario, it still works, but we've had to do some major adjustments to it because his life changed in a really, really good way. And so we're very excited for him. But let's go back to assets for a minute. What's a reasonable rate of return? So I'm showing a portfolio weighted average of 4.84%. So that would be 1% on his bank account, right? Just checking at 1%. And I'm doing a 5% rate of return overall on the 401k. What do you think would be a great rate of return? Like, what would you say? Like, if you had to put a rate of return in here, what would you want to put in here? Leave it in the comments. Put it in the chat. Because, I mean, for me, like, I invest. Not only do I invest money for our clients and manage assets, but I invest my own money. And so, like, when I think about rates of return at 37, I think 8, 9, 10%, right? I'm not saying that we're going to average it. The market's averaged about 10% since 1950. It's 8% with inflation. It's 6% if you look at it over the long term, like 1880-ish. But I mean, I think, okay, if I'm investing strictly with the S&P 500, I'm looking at anywhere between, I don't know if you guys heard that, but that was some Florida thunder right there. I'm looking at somewhere between 7 and 9% overall. The Rebel says 5 to 6 is reasonable. That's kind of what I feel. I think 5 to 6 is pretty reasonable. Dwayne says I typically go with 4% at most these days. I think 4 to 6%. Keep in mind, Glenn, let's go back and review the data. Glenn's 49. So he's stopping working at like a prime time in his life. Now, I get it. He's single, right? He says he's single. He only counts on himself, and there's a disability. So let's strip out the disability side of things. At 49 years old, normally you're getting to the peak of your career, right? Like your kids are either gone or will be gone soon. So your expenses are going to drop. So you're able to put a lot more money into retirement savings. Now, it's funny I say that because I recorded a video yesterday you guys are going to really like. Keep an eye out for it. It's called Spend More Money Now. Stop Saving for Retirement. Get ready for that one. You're going to like that one a lot. But the reason I did that was because it's hard sometimes to have that transition from like saving to spending. I don't know if that's you. Like me right now, I'm in that like saving mode, right? Like save my money, save my money, save my money. But what I want people to understand is like when you're between the ages of 50 and 60 and you're working and you're saving for retirement, you're putting money into your 401k, you're getting your match, you're maxing out your Roth IRAs or whatever you're doing, you're putting all that in. But then you're like, oh man, I can save more. And I'm like, wait a sec, between ages 50 and 60, you're probably like the most healthiest that you're going to be like long-term, right? Okay. And I'm just, Dwayne says he's a pessimist. Dwayne says I'm a pessimist with the market. I'm going to kind of be a pessimist in the sense of your health for a second. Between the ages of 50, 60, you're probably going to be the healthiest you are. You're going to have the most freedom, right? I'm 37. I don't know if you can see this. Let me just, let's go this way real quick. I got 3 kids. There ain't no freedom in my world right now. And what I mean is I live in America, the land of the free, but there ain't no, like, I wake up, I make breakfast, I take care of kids. Then my wife takes care of our kids. She homeschools them. I come home from the office, kids at night, kids. So there's not a lot of freedom. I don't mean that in the sense of we're tied down. They are a blessing. I would never change it for the world. God has been very good to us. But between the ages of 50 and 60, you have this opportunity to where maybe you don't have to have the responsibility of kids. Hopefully your kids are gone. And so you don't have the responsibility of kids. And so you can spend a little bit more, enjoy yourself in the ages of 50 and 60, as long as you're doing everything right, right? 401k, Roth IRA, doing what you need to do. You have a good emergency fund. You're saving for retirement. You have a comprehensive financial EKG. And so that's what you really want to be focusing on. And then spend some money. Enjoy yourself. Spend more money in your 50s and 60s while you're healthy and while you have freedom. That's what we're going to talk about, okay? That's not the point of today's video, but I did it. I recorded this yesterday. It's going to take a couple weeks to edit, but then you're going to keep a watch out for that. So here's what we got. Again, a 5% rate of return is what we're doing. Let me go through some of these comments real quick. The Rebel says, I'm hearing the thunder now. We could use some rain in Pinellas County. Hey, Rebel, local. You're a locale. Dara says, what would happen if you work part-time for, let's say, 10K a year? That's my goal, just to do taxes a couple months out of the year. That's we're going to look at that. So we're going to look, I got about 15 minutes left in this live stream. We're going to go through some ways that he can do this. And I think the part-time is really important, Dara, because of the disability, because he's done an amazing job saving. He's 49 years old. He's got $1.2 million saved for retirement. That's great, right? Like, think about, let me show you guys something. Like, I don't want to be down on this dude because he's doing an amazing job. But like, let me see if I can find, where would it be? Let me show you guys. I'm looking for account balances. Here we go. All right, let me show you this real quick. So he's 49 years old. Let's go back to my share here. Okay, so this is the Vanguard How America Saves for 2023. Look at this. Ages 35 to 44, the average saved is $76,354. The median is $28,318. Ages 45 to 54, this is where Glenn falls. The average save for retirement is $142. The median's $48,301. Now, before you start going, hey, Drew, that's only at Vanguard. That's only Vanguard. Like, look up the Fed survey too, dude. It's about the same, okay? Ages 55 to 64, 207 versus 71,000 median. So, like, he's doing great. He's got $1.2 million at 49. He's doing awesome. We just need to make some adjustments so that he can enjoy the rest of his life. Now, Dara made a great comment about working part-time. So let's look at that. The Rebel said I was homeschooled as well. Jason says, homeschool, good for you. Good for my wife. She's the one that puts in all the work. And Fast Eddie says, good morning, Drew. Hey, Fast Eddie, Rays really romped on the Yankees last night. I don't know if you saw that game. 4 home runs. So let's look at this. So let's add a little part-time work in. So let's go back to income, and let's say that he does a little part-time work. And I don't know what his disability is because they don't say it in the Market Watch article, but let's say that he makes, I don't know, let's say, let me do a quick Google search real quick. Let's look at where he's in Nebraska. So Nebraska average part-time work salary. Let's see what that is for Nebraska. So 30,000 was the average salary range for a part-time worker in Nebraska. Okay. So just so you know that I'm not lying to you, here's the generative AI experiment with Google. They say 30,469 is the average. So let's just use that. Let's go over here and let's do half of that at first. Let's say 15,000. Okay. And let's say he starts out at 49, right? And let's go to, what do you guys want to go to? 60? How long do you think he wants to, like, if we do 55, well, let's go to 60. Let's say 59. Let's go 10 years. We're going to do some part-time work. Now, keep in mind, I always point this out too. If you're self-employed, and we're talking about retirement calculators on here because this is what this guy asked. He says, can I trust retirement calculators telling me it's okay to retire? No, homeboy, you cannot retire. But like when you're calculating the money coming out for taxes, so Glenn's going to be working, which means he's W-2'd. So we have Social Security tax and we have Medicare tax. But what if Glenn was self-employed? You see how it's different? See how it bumps up because I'm a self-employed individual. I have to pay my Social Security. I have to pay my Medicare. Okay. So you need to be cognizant of that. That's what I'm talking about, these little things that you need to be aware of. Okay. That's just free advice for you there. So part-time work, let's say he's going to do $15,000 a year from 49 to 59. Our expenses we're going to drop travel a little bit here and we're going to go to retirement. So now we're getting up to 78 years old. So at 78, now he's out of money, but we've brought down the rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall. So we're getting closer to where we need to be. Now, keep in mind, all this money's in 401k. Now, let me show you something real quick. You might say, hey, Drew, what if all this money wasn't in 401k? What if it was in like a non-qualified account? Because I don't know how he's saving. Like it doesn't say in the Market Watch article. It just says he has $1.2 million. What if we throw this into like a non-qualified account, which would be crazy? Let's see. There we go. So non-qualified just basically means like after-tax dollars. So that's what I call a freedom fund. So like if you have extra money that, like, let's say you're maxing out your 401k or you're getting your contribution, let's say, or you're getting your match, and let's say you're putting money into a Roth or an IRA, like what I do personally, I'll tell you what I do personally. So I have a SEP IRA, a self-employed IRA. Okay. So I try to put as much as I can into my SEP based on what the IRS limitations are. And then on a monthly basis, I take a portion of my check that we get and I put it into a non-qualified account, a joint account with myself and my wife. And the reason I do that is because that's giving me a bucket of money that's growing that doesn't have any kind of IRS limitations on it, right? Like I'm going to pay taxes on that every year, capital gains, dividends, interest. I'm also going to be able to write off capital losses. But like if I'm 49 years old and I want to retire, that money, there's no like rule of 55 or 72. Like the IRS is going to be like, no, Drew, you can't pull that money out because you're too young. No, yeah, I can, because it's post-tax money. Like I pay tax on it. Actually, double taxation because I paid taxes on it. I put it in the market. I paid more taxes on it. Wasn't there like a tea party in Boston about this some time ago? So that's why I like to put, Fast Eddie says no Roth for both of you. Fast Eddie, dude, you know that there's Roths. If I in my world, based on our videos, yes. So we have Roth IRAs. We do conversions, right? I put money in the SEP. I do a conversion for the Roth IRA. So if we have non-qualified money, how does that change the taxes? So we look at this. Look, it gets him 2 more years. 2 more years because it's non-qualified versus 401k. So that's why it's really important. Again, I don't know how this guy's money is labeled. I'm just using a 401k because that's the average, or that's where most people save their money. But taxes play a huge factor. So let's go to taxes for a second. Let's go to 2024. And we can see here's some wages. Here's our gross income. Here's our deduction, single deduction there. There's our taxable income. So he's in a pretty low tax bracket with the part-time work. So this would be something that I would be talking to him about. And I would be saying, hey, what about increasing the part-time work? I'm not saying that you have to put in 40 hours. He said, I'm exhausted, right? What does it say? It says anxious, burned out, and uncertain. Well, if you're anxious, burned out, and uncertain, I want to help you be unanxious, unburned out, and certain. So we probably are going to have to work a little bit in order to make this work. Now, what if we don't want to work? What if we are strictly, I don't want to work? Because I get people who call me all the time, and they're like, Drew, or it's the people in the comment section, right? They say, you didn't help him retire. He came to you. He's 49. He's got $1.2 million, and you didn't help him retire. And I'm like, dude, like Orlando's about an hour and a half away. I could go get some pixie dust from Tinkerbell and I could sprinkle it on any retirement plan, but it doesn't work, right? Math doesn't lie, right? Numbers don't lie. gravity doesn't lie. And so we have to be real. We have to look at things in a real manner and say, what can we do? So in this case, what if he said, like, I definitely don't want to work? Okay, Glenn. Well, there's a couple things that we need to look at. And it goes back to your expenses, right? Duh. Like, if you don't want to work, like, something's got to come out of here. So we either take travel down to zero. So what if we take travel down to zero and we just have $4,000 a month? Now we're at 79. We're getting closer, but we're not getting to where we want to be. So now we got to lower expenses even more. So what if we take them down to 3,500? What does that do? 88. Okay. We're moving in a good direction. 88. I feel pretty good about 88, right? 88 years old. Here's the thing though. A lot of times you all see this 88, this red dot, when I'm doing a live stream or a video, and you're like, they're good. They ran out of money at 88. They're happy. Yes. But remember with him, what did he say? I got a disability. So when I'm talking to you guys, when we're doing what I call a first visit together. So if you meet with me, we sit down for a visit together, a visit via Zoom. And I'm old school. I like to see you. And I use a pen and paper. Here's my pen and paper pad. I'm kind of an old school guy. I don't send you anything to fill out. I just like to ask questions. And when we sit down together and I'm talking, you might say, hey, Drew, I have a chronic disability. You know, I have a client who has PTSD. And he tells me, hey, Drew, I have PTSD. And that causes me to spend my money a certain way. So when we're looking at your retirement plan, I might be talking a little bit more about long-term care, right? Because that's going to be a big deal. Because if you have a disability, you're probably going to need some sort of extended care down the line. Now, odds are it's not going to be long-term care. Okay. Long-term care is like being in a facility. Okay. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've only had a handful of clients in a facility. Most people have assisted living, which means you're in a facility and it's not 24/7 care, or it's informal care. Informal care would be where a spouse is taking care of you, or a child is taking care of you, or a partner is taking care of you. My wife's aunt had Parkinson's. Her uncle took care of her aunt, okay, for the duration of her disease until she passed away, until the very, very end when hospice was called in. That's called informal care. Now, we need to look at this. He's single. We're in Nebraska. And what we can look at is we have these monthly median costs for Nebraska. Now, these are based on 2021 figures. These get updated about every couple years. But we've got in-home care, we've got community assisted living, and we have nursing home facility. So for him, let's say, because he's single, I don't know about kids, but let's say because he said it's only me, let's assume that he's going to need like assisted living or a nursing home, right? He's probably not going to have in-home care because there's not going to be anybody living there. So his community assisted living facility is $4,000 a month right now. So what we can do is we can come over here and we can say, okay, current monthly costs are $4,076. We're going to give that a cost increase of 3.07%, which means it's a daily cost of $136. Let's say he's going to start with assisted living at $80. Okay. So that's projected lifetime expense of $533,000. Well, we come down here and we look at this and we're out of money rather quick at 83. Now that's for 4 years of care. Now my aunt, or my wife's aunt, she had Parkinson's for she was diagnosed right after we were married. We've been married 8 years now, and she passed away 2 years ago. So 6 years. So she had it for 6 years. And so you've really got to start counting the cost, right? We say that at church a lot, count the cost. You got to count the cost for healthcare because it's a big deal. And it's something we need to be thinking about. And we need to be thinking about this because this guy has a certain situation. Okay. I got about 3 minutes. If you have any questions, leave those. So I'm not saying this is a bad scenario. I'm just saying it needs something. We've got to do some adjustments. Unfortunately, I know he's burned out. Listen, I get burned out too. We all get burned out, right? That's why I book walks into my day. I book what we call the 1 minute pause into our day, where we step away from the computer and just have 1 minute of silence and nobody talking to us, just to kind of catch our breath and just kind of feel like human for a second. Fast Eddie says this: numbers don't lie, but they always don't say the same thing. That's true. And that's why it's so important, Fast Eddie. You're right, man, because like this was what he was saying. He was saying, like, can I trust a retirement calculator? Look at this. I think he said my retirement account report that I'm insufficiently prepared to retire now. So he's got some retirement calculators saying that he's insufficiently, but others show that it's very doable. He's probably plugging in the same numbers. And that's why you've really got, that's why I love this software. I love using this for clients because it goes through the granular stuff that's a big deal later on down the road. Rebel says, are you Zoom only or do you offer in-person visits? Well, I'm mainly Zoom only, Rebel. I would say mainly, obviously local clients we would do in person, but let me say this, we're more efficient via Zoom or phone call. Obviously we make accommodations if we need to, but for the most part, we do Zoom only just because we found that it's more efficient. And listen, you live in Pinellas, I live in Tampa. You understand the driving around here. Who wants to drive 275 and fight traffic, to head over to our office for that? So, okay, perfect. I got about 1 minute. Any other questions, concerns? Trade deadline for Major League Baseball is in like 6 hours, Fast Eddie. Hopefully the Yankees pull off something for you there. Leave your favorite team in the comment section. We are Go Rays. I don't think I have any Rays stuff hanging around right now. Go Rays here in Tampa. Maybe you've got Steven says thumbs up. Steven, thank you for watching. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate that. We got about 30 seconds if anybody has any questions. The Rebel says Rays. Let's go. Let's go. All right, guys. Well, hey, thank you so much for watching the live stream. Sorry it's been so long getting on one of these, but I appreciate you. Talk to you soon. God bless. Bye-bye.